I didn't think about that because I mailed her one right after I heard about it. I didn't. I called her twice. Oh, they're doing the best. So Mary's got rusty after a year. Almost whenever you are. We can take care of some business while we wait. Sisters. Welcome to Relief Society. I want to be sure that all of you have the church apps on your phone. Do you have the LDS, the library and tools? Those are the two that we use. All of you have the church apps on your phone. Do you have the LDS library and tools? We're almost there. If you don't have the LDS library and tools on your phone, please download them because they are such a resource for us. And then there's another one called Living, these little leaves that helps link you to the ward itself and the different organizations. So check into those if you don't have them, and please download them because Living has so much on there. Any subject, whatever you want to get into. The library, of course, all the conference talks from whenever, and the scriptures, and then tools is all the members in the ward and the stake and calendars and stuff. So the church has gone tech, high tech. And I watched the the broadcast yesterday, the worldwide broadcast on sharing the gospel. And it was archived, so I didn't watch it live in the morning, but later in the afternoon, when I was on the church website, I watched it. And it was wonderful. They had all these little videos of people around the world, teens and younger kids and adults, and how they had been friendshipped, and then their friends shared the gospel with them. They invited them to activities into church, and how they became members of the church, or how they became active after being less active for many years. And it was really good. And it was Elder Oaks and President Oaks and Elder Uchtdorf and Elder Cook and Sister Cannon from Primary Young Women's, can't remember which one. But anyway, it was really nice. So there's those things on the church website that you can also access from your apps. Okay, I have a few announcements. Welcome, Hillary. We're excited to have her as the second counselor. And I know she will add a lot of enthusiasm and insight into many things. If you hadn't heard, Mike and Kathy Mills' daughter, Melissa, was killed in a tragic accident a week and a half ago. And we have a card going around for you to sign. There is a memorial celebration of life this afternoon at 3:00 in La Grande. And it's just off of Santa Fe and Buhack Road. If you want to go, we can tell you how to get there. Please, sisters, I'm procrastinated talking to everyone about your sisters that you minister to. So if you can think about it, or if I don't get back to you in the next few days to see how your sisters are doing, if you could let me know, whether on the phone, text message, somehow let me know how the sisters are doing. And as Bishop Holloway mentioned today, we are kind of reshuffle things around and work more with the priesthood. We cleaned the building yesterday. Totally. Yes, look in the kitchen. It is now almost empty. All the stacks and stacks of bowls and everything that has been there for eons of time are now going to Mountain Crisis elsewhere, because no one ever picks them up and takes them home. So we kept a few essential things. Everything else is gone. And also the middle closet where we have all the paper products. Plates are on one shelf, the cups on a shelf, all plasticware. So, and they're labeled. So if you need something, look for the label on the shelf. And then when you're done, if you have leftovers, put them back on the shelf where they go. We are just trying to get so organized. Thank you, Sister Ball, for all your input. Okay. Oh, and one more thing. Our pancake breakfast a week from tomorrow. You got a flyer, invite your friends, and we are going to be setting up after church next week, and then putting out the decorations after the priesthood gets the tables up. So anybody who wants to stay and have a little fun decorating, you are welcome to stay after church next week. But come to the breakfast and invite your friends. And along with the homemade blackberry syrup, I have a couple of other flavors too that I'm going to bring. All right. Julie has volunteered, consented, was bribed to lead us in our discussion. The prize.
I don't know.
We had to do, and y'all know that Julie's going to be leaving soon. So we had to christen her before she leaves.
It's funny because my first calling when I joined the church was teacher for Relief Society. So I feel like I went into Mariposa like that, and I'm leaving Mariposa like that. So I would say 2 months ago, Sister Barrett asked me to do this lesson. And honestly, I'll be honest, I didn't look at it till a week ago. And because I just thought it was just going to be one of those talks, you don't have to study that much. Well, it's on the Constitution. So I need your help. Yeah, I've tried to study this week, and there's just a lot to it. Why do you think that Dallin H. Oaks, President Dallin H. Oaks, gave a talk during conference on the Constitution?
Because we're losing it.
Because we're losing.
We're not following the Constitution.
Do we feel he was prompted? He was told? Yes, Sister Campbell.
I think, something to remember when we think about these talks is the talks are not given for any particular place in the world. Now, obviously he was prompted, but the Constitution is part of America, but he's speaking to the world. And the Constitution is something that was divinely inspired. We know that the founders of our country had manifest destiny. They felt like starting this country was God's will. And we know from the Book of Mormon and things that came through in our church history that it really was God's will that this country be formed. And sadly, we see that the Constitution was founded on a Christian basis, various Christian beliefs, but it was founded on a Christian basis. And we are seeing that begin and pulled apart as they kind of skew things and take Christ out of our country.
Excellent. That's pretty much the lesson. It really is what you just said. So his opening line was, "In this troubled time, I have felt to speak about the inspired Constitution of the United States. This Constitution is of special importance to our members in the United States, but it is also common heritage of constitutions around the world." Okay, so the United States was the first country to have a constitution. Do you know how many countries have a constitution today? He mentions this, all but 3. So it was based off of the theory where you have the 3 legislature, judicial, and executive. That was based off of, anybody know it? The Magna Carta in England. And I really had not paid much attention to that. So that probably was the first type of constitution. Has anybody got this lesson pulled up? I'd like to read the first 3 paragraphs. If we could take turns reading 1 paragraph each. Gail, can you do one?
Structure and limits to the exercise of government powers. The United States, what are you doing?
So they can hear and Zoom.
The United States Constitution is the oldest written constitution still in force today. Though originally adopted by only a small number of colonies, it soon became a model worldwide. Today, every nation except 3 have adopted written constitutions.
Hillary, do you have it or?
I'm sorry, I don't have it.
Okay. Jean, do you have it?
Here, I can do Gail's.
Oh, okay. Hillary's gonna get the next one.
Okay. In these remarks, I do not speak for any political party or other group. I speak for the United States Constitution, which I have studied for more than 60 years. I speak from my experience as a law clerk to the Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court. I speak from my 15 years as a professor of law and my 3.5 years as a justice on the Utah Supreme Court. Most important, I speak from 37 years as an apostle of Jesus Christ. Responsibility to study the meaning of the divinely inspired United States Constitution to the work of his restored church.
Thank you. Jean, you got the last one?
The United States Constitution is unique because God revealed that He established it for the rights and protection of all flesh, Doctrine and Covenants 101-77. That is why this Constitution is of special concern for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints throughout the world. Whether or how its principles should be applied in other nations of the world is for them to decide.
Okay, thank you. I want to go ahead and touch on those scriptures that are mentioned, plus a few more. So if we can go to D&C 77. Yeah, 101 verse 77. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
According to the laws and constitution of the people, which I have suffered to be established and should be maintained for the rights and protection of all flesh, according to just and holy principles.
Okay, let me get there.
Doesn't go on.
And if you click on that blue hyperlink on that, it will take you now to the Doctrine and Covenants. And could someone read 101-80? If you're there.
I got it. For this purpose have I established the constitution of this land by the hands of wise men whom I raised up unto this very purpose, and redeemed the land by the shedding
of blood. There was a lot of bloodshed in our history, isn't there? The men who wrote the Constitution, I pulled up a talk there's been multiple talks on the Constitution. Ezra Taft Benson did at least two. And this is from one titled The Constitution, and I didn't write down what year this was done. Yes, this is a land fertilized by the blood of patriots. During the struggle for independence, nearly 9,000 of the colonial forces were killed. Among those 56 patriots who had pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor by signing the Declaration of Independence. At least 9 paid that price with their lifeblood. What do we know about the men who wrote the Constitution? Anybody know anything specifically? I'm going to share a few things, and then if you want to add on, we'll do that. Who were these delegates? Who were these whom the Lord designated wise men, whom he raised up and were mostly young men in the prime of their life, their average age being 44. Benjamin Franklin was the eldest at 81. At 81, that's amazing. George Washington, the presiding officer at the convention, was 55. But I don't know if you guys have studied George Washington. He's kind of an interesting person. He had such oral pain, you know, the myth of the wooden teeth. He had such oral pain that speaking was horrific for the poor man. So that he was our first president. I mean, he really was not a healthy person. And the dentures he had made, literally, they had a spring at the back of them. Can you imagine putting that horrible thing made out of deceased people's teeth and hippopotamus teeth and a spring in your mouth to talk and to lead this group? Alexander Hamilton was only 32. James Madison, who recorded the proceeding of the convention with remarkable notes, was only 36. These were young men, but men of exceptional character, sober, seasoned, distinguished men of affairs, drawn from various walks of life. Of the 39 signers, 22 of them were educated by leading American colleges and in Great Britain. 18 were or had been lawyers or judges. 26 had seen service in the Continental Congress. 19 had served in the Revolutionary Army. 17 as officers. 4 had been on Washington's personal staff during the war. Among that assembled of the 39 signers were to be found 2 future presidents of the United States, and 1, the father of the country, a vice president of the United States, a secretary of the Treasury, a secretary of war, a secretary of state, 2 chief justices of the Supreme Court, and 3 who served as justices, and Ben Franklin, a diplomat, philosopher, scientist, and statesman. Anyway, those are just kind of side notes, but I think it's really interesting to think about who were these chosen men and why is the Constitution so important to our religion? Anybody have an idea?
The church couldn't have been restored without the Constitution in effect, and especially the Bill of Rights made it possible.
You studied the lesson, I could
I
tell.
read it.
Okay, so I wish I had a chalkboard up here, but the timeline, I don't know if anybody's ever thought of that. Constitution was, I think, completed 1787. Declaration of Independence, 1776. Bill of Rights, 1792. Okay, when was the first vision? You guys know this one? 1820. 1820. So we're talking a span of 20 to 30 years in most of this. So 20 to 30 years, when we look back, is not much. That's one generation, you know. My kids are 20 years younger than me, right? First vision was 1820. Joseph Smith saw the golden plates in 1823, and this church was established 1830. So that's a pretty short window of time in history. It really is. And the Constitution made it possible. So thank you, Linda. So what are your thoughts on the Constitution? What is our responsibility in the church or as citizens of this country? What's our responsibility? Hillary.
I think that as a society, as church members, it's important to vote. It's important to recognize when people within a leadership role, specifically politicians, add on things. There's always that little bit of extra text, extra verbiage that can compromise our rights. I think it's important that we pay attention and not just go with the flow or say, my vote doesn't matter. My vote might not decide the presidential election, but my vote here could decide what happens in our schools, with our hospital, and every little right we give up at home is magnified throughout the whole country.
Anybody else? Yes, Sister Campbell.
The Constitution is a living document. It did not stay the same. It has not stayed the same. And because that's really important, because it's not impossible for them to make changes to the Constitution. Changes have been made over the last several hundred years, and they could come in for whatever reason and vote in a change to this Constitution. It's not set in stone. I think that in some ways the church kind of mirrors that, as we've been seeing a lot of changes in the church itself. People think that, oh, this is the way things are, but then the prophet comes in and says, you know what? Nope, church is 2 hours long. And I guess, back in the 80s or whatever, church was, throughout the week. And so
Right.
it's not that different in that things can change. And I think even if you look at the Doctrine and Covenants and how it was written, but then later, there were some major changes that were added in just a couple, but even then, things can change. Not everything is always set in stone. And I think we need to remember that with our politics here in our country and other countries, as liberal policies become more and more common, that things can change. And so it's important that the church and the members of the church, if they begin to actually, try to do something like change your freedom of religion or your right to do those things, that the church stands up and then they make their voice heard, because we need that freedom.
Excellent. And that's one of the points I needed to bring up. So I really appreciate that, because I'm not going to be able to hit all the points. But yes, we need to be aware and active. Karen. Dallin H. Oak says, our belief, this is number 4, if you see the Roman numeral 4 in the lesson, in the talk. Our belief in divine inspiration gives Latter-day Saints a unique responsibility to uphold and defend the United States Constitution and principles of constitutionalism wherever we live. We should trust in the Lord and be positive about this nation's future. That kind of struck me, because I'm not always positive about this nation's future. And he's not given a political opinion. He's just given a talk about the Constitution. What else are faithful Latter-day Saints to do? We must pray for the Lord to guide and bless all nations and their leaders. This is a part of the Article of Faith. Being subject to presidents or rulers, of course, poses no obstacle to our opposing individuals' laws or policies. It does require that we exercise our influence civilly and peacefully within the framework of our Constitution and applicable laws. On contested issues, we should seek to moderate and unify. So I think those are great points during this time in the world. One of the things that was mentioned, and I just kind of wanted to bring it up, from Ezra Taft Benson's talk on the Constitution, our divine Constitution, and this was from 1976, so our bicentennial. He reminds us, shortly after President Spencer W. Kimball became president of the church, he assigned me to go into the vault at the St. George Temple and check the early records. As I did so, I realized the fulfillment of a dream I had. Sorry, guys, I can't think. I'm dyslexic. You guys are really throwing me off. Is anybody even tuned in? Can we just, oh, Joette is. Hi, Joette. Did she? We miss you.
Hi, Julie. Beautiful lesson.
I had ever since the learning of the visit of the founding fathers to the St. George Temple, I saw with my own eyes the record of work which was done for the founding fathers of this great nation, beginning with George Washington. So what happened in the St. George Temple? Anybody remember? I kind of forgot about this. Tom remembered, but I didn't remember. Thinking of it, the founding fathers of this nation and those great men appeared within those sacred walls and had their vicarious work done for them. President Wilford Woodruff spoke of it in these words: "Before I left St. George, the spirit of the dead gathered around me, wanting to know why we did not redeem them. They said, 'You have had the use of this endowment house for a number of years, yet nothing has ever been done for us. We laid the foundation of government you now enjoy, and we never apostatized from it, but we remain true to it and faithful to God.'" After he became president of the church, President Wilford Woodruff declared that those men who laid the foundation of the American government were the best spirits that God, the God of heaven, could find on earth. They were choice spirits, and they were inspired by the Lord. So we have responsibilities, don't we? Not only to our founding fathers, but to our family. We're going to be called on this, right? Yes, Sister Lewis.
It wasn't just the founding fathers, but their families that were all blessed in the temple at the same time, and other members because of that.
My understanding that every president who has since passed on to the other side, the work has been done.
And probably. So I would imagine. I don't know. Okay. Let me see. I've kind of covered the things that I wanted to. This was a lesson that was not easy for me to do. Joette, did you have anything you wanted to add? Oh, or do we have to unmute you if you're our only guest? We're on video just for you, Joette? Come on.
I don't have anything to add, Julie. I
Okay.
came in a little bit late. I think you've given a beautiful lesson.
Okay. I know you're a teacher and like Sister Gamble have a lot to add to this lesson if you wanted to.
Nope, I'm just listening and learning.
Okay, we're going to go over on Roman numeral number 2 on this talk. We're going to talk about the 5, I think there was 5. Yeah. Things that the Constitution provided. I guess that's a way to say it. Someone you want to read the first paragraph under the Roman numeral number 2? Sister Dixon. Linda.
Either way. First is the principle that the source of government power is the people. In a time when sovereign power was universally assumed to come from the divine rights of kings or military power, attributing Sovereign power to the people was revolutionary. Philosophers had advocated this, but the United States Constitution was the first to apply it. Sovereign power in the people does not mean that mobs or other groups of people can intervene to intimidate or force government action. The Constitution established a constitutional democratic republic where the people exercise their power through their elected representatives.
So I think it's interesting he mentioned the mobs and inappropriate ways, because that has happened a lot in the last year and a half, definitely last year. So think that's an interesting and timely comment that he has. Who's going to read a second inspired? Okay.
Wait a minute, wait
Somebody
a
got
minute.
a phone?
Suggest that I read it.
Okay. She's helpful like that.
Democratic way.
A second inspired principle is the division of delegated power between the nation and its subsidiary states. In our federal system, this unprecedented principle has sometimes been altered by inspired amendments, such as those abolishing slavery and extending voting rights to women mentioned earlier. Significantly, the United States Constitution limits the national government to the exercise of powers granted expressly or by implication, and it reserves all other government powers to the states, respectively, or to the people.
So just like you had mentioned earlier, the Constitution is a living, changing document. So the things that they mention that have been changed, name a few. We can vote, right? Yes. Sister.
You know, we are the United States of America, and I think a lot of people forget that. The states were designed to have their own individual government. And so what he was saying is there are some laws that supersede that, like there's no slavery, women can vote, and now in our country, gay people can be married in all states. Those are superseded by the Constitution, but the state itself has its own right to make its own laws about all sorts of things, including education and you know, vehicle laws and things like that.
Mask wearing comes to mind because each state was very different. If we went out of state, we saw that. Sister Dixon?
The women in Utah were suffragists. They really campaigned and worked to get women.
Didn't they get
Right.
the right to vote in Utah before
I
anybody
think they
else?
did. Women could vote in Utah before anywhere else. And so it's really interesting that the Relief Society sisters were at the forefront.
And we saw it in this last election, right? And there were different policies per mini state on how voting was allowed, how the count was done, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. And it just says another inspired principle. Can someone read that? Yes, Ruth Ann.
Well over a century before our 1787 Constitutional Convention, the English Parliament pioneered the separation of legislative and executive authority when they wrested certain powers from the king. The inspiration in the American Convention was to delegate independent executive, legislative, and judicial powers so these three branches could exercise checks upon one another.
For what purpose would that serve?
For everybody honest, keep a balance.
Check the checker, right?
Yeah.
Ruth Ann's an engineer. I'm sure you had many checks on you, right?
And see that now, and it's not just our current administration. It was in the previous administration too, where they do everything they can to go around those checks so that they can get what they want. And that's not the way it was designed.
Yeah. Yeah, they've learned the loopholes and not good, not good.
We should put you in the middle.
And also, power to veto, power to, no one branch of the government can do it all, right? That's the goal. But like you say, they're learning how to work around it. Okay, a fourth inspired principle. Who's got that? Anybody got it? Jean?
Inspired principle is in the cluster of vital guarantees of individual rights and specific limits on government authority in the Bill of Rights, adopted by amendment just 3 after the Constitution went into force. A Bill of Rights was not new. Here the inspiration was in the practical implementation of principles pioneered in England, beginning with the Magna Carta. The writers of the Constitution were familiar with these because some of the colonial characters had such guarantees. Characters.
There's some big words in this. I've had to.
Yeah,
I know it.
Lynn,
the next paragraph is part of it also. Without a Bill of Rights, America could not have served as the host nation for the restoration of the gospel, which began just 3 decades later. There was divine inspiration in the original provision that there should be no religious test for public office, but the addition of the religious freedom and anti-establishment guarantees in the First Amendment was vital. We also see divine inspiration in the First Amendment's freedoms of speech and press, and in the personal protections in other amendments, such as for criminal prosecutions.
I think about you talk about once. Not only was the Lord working in the United States, he was dealing with all the other countries that had rules, laws, monarchies in place that impacted those people that came to the Americas.
right.
And then received education and remembered what it was like in the old country. So he was working long before the United States even exists.
And you really have to think about that plan. God had a plan. Look at specific countries, England, Samoa.
Some of the most dominant countries, and they produced these things that our founding fathers said that's not divinely inspired, or we need to make a change.
Mhm.
But sometimes we don't know to make a change until something happens to force our hand.
That's right. Okay. Yes, I'm sorry.
The religious makeup of the country was very different. You had all these people who would come from various countries in Europe, but especially they were fleeing England early times of our country. They were fleeing persecution because as the kings would change each generation, they were constantly flip-flopping between the Catholic Church and the Church of England, and had created big issues. As we saw with Joseph Smith and the uprising of the 1800s, they kind of had something going on like that in England. The problem is they were saying, you can't have this church, you can't be this belief. So they began fleeing here. And so nowadays we have great ability to have this religious freedom, so that people who are Muslims and Jews are coming over to our country because they feel like they can be free in that. But at that time, that really wasn't what was happening. You did have some Jews coming over, but mostly you had people from various Christian beliefs that were coming over. And our country was built on Christ and on Heavenly Father. It was not built on this idea that, it was built on the idea that everybody should be able to worship the way they want, but it wasn't built on this idea of the Baha'i faith where, there's a God and we all can worship him in our own way. It really wasn't. It was built on this foundation of Christ.
But I think it's interesting that when Mitt Romney ran for president, religion was brought up a lot. I mean, whether you voted for him or not, I'm not saying that. But I thought it was. Did anybody else see that or think that? Catholic?
Catholic, whether or not he really is. When he ran as a Catholic, as a man who is, part of the Catholic Church, nobody said anything.
Right.
Because he wasn't.
Yeah,
first.
that
And I
might
think
have something
that's
to
the
do.
thing is you had Romney trying to break in, and people, Christians, but then at the same time, some that are so against, like it was a way to divide us. Again, it's about that division. And the Constitution is not about division. It's about bringing us
Right.
together as we live in these, back then 13 states, but now 50 states. We're supposed to be together through the Constitution, but sometimes our policies are trying to divide us.
Just curious, were you a history major at all? No? You seem like you know it pretty well.
You're just a
Oh,
really good teacher.
I appreciate it. Hey, I really appreciate it this week. But you know what? That's what we're here for, to give input. And that's one reason we do ask that you try to read the lesson beforehand. Because when you read the lesson beforehand, you kind of think about it for a while, right? You know? Yes, Hillary.
There was a point where state and religion were separated. But in areas of politics like presidents, it sneaks back in. You're talking about that runaround, that go around. And instead of using it to unify people, religion is being used to separate people.
Religion is, politics are, yes.
I saw a video, there's a new thing, and because I am a folk dancer and I dance ballet, I found fascinating. It's called hip play. And it's a combination of hip hop and ballet. But this little video, it was all about, and I'm quoting the director, Black girls.
Mm.
And I thought, as a ballerina, why do I have to be a specific color to do this separate genre of dance? When dance is of the Lord, music is of the Lord, we're all of the Lord, regardless of our color. I see today we're separating from each other more than, in fact, I think we used to when I was
Exactly.
growing up.
Yeah. The world tries to separate us, and Jesus Christ tries to bring us back together as one unit. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I heard that recently on a Christian radio, and that is the essence of the whole thing, right? The world's trying to segregate us into all these boxes, and we can have different opinions. We can be different political beliefs and still get along. Okay, we're going to go to the fifth and finally. Can somebody read that for me? I'll read it. That's fine. You got it?
And finally, see divine inspiration in the vital purpose of the entire Constitution. We are to be governed by law and not by individuals, and our loyalty is to the Constitution and its principles and processes, not to any office holder. In this way, all persons are to be equal before the law. These principles block the autocratic ambitions that have corrupted democracy in some countries. They also mean that none of the three branches of government should be dominant over the others or prevent the others from performing their proper constitutional functions to check one another. I was looking up Ezra
Yeah,
Taft
his
Benson.
talks were really interesting.
Well, make your point. Tell me.
Yeah, when Ezra Taft Benson left office, where was it at? Anyway, he left, but there's a lot of controversy when he first got in there as Secretary of Agriculture. But when he got out, he was respected for honesty and integrity. So he was ODS too. That's
Thank you. I didn't
brought it
even
up.
remember that. Thank you.
I told her, but I couldn't think of his name at first.
I think of the men who wrote our Constitution. I was in the Navy, and when I had to take my oath to fight and defend and to, kill if necessary, I took that very seriously. I thought, could I really kill somebody for this country? And I decided, yeah, if I could, if our rights were being taken away, if my life was being threatened or my fellow soldier, sailor, I could do that. And I took that very seriously. So when we stand, at a rodeo or whatever for the red, white, and blue, our family has always taken that very seriously. And my son, he has his 20 years in the Navy in 1 month. So I feel really old. I never thought I'd be this old. But he's 4th generation Navy on his dad's side, and he's 3rd generation Navy on my side. So not many people can say that because anyway, I'm glad he's getting out and he's going to do well. But I am thankful for our liberties that we have in this country. Just so many, I feel pretty safe driving. I drove to Texas a few weeks ago by myself. I feel pretty safe. I feel pretty good even today that we have a strong country, even with its faults and problems. We need to pray for it and keep it healthy, keep active in our knowledge of politics and what's going on in the world and share that with each other. I know Sam Crutchfield is always one that's sharing what's coming up in the school, because I don't know. I don't have kids in school now, but we need to be participating in what are our grandkids learning? What are our great grandkids learning? Because it can be scary out there. Whatever religion, whatever political party you are affiliated with, we need to be present. Anyway, I'm thankful that I had this opportunity to lead this discussion. I don't teach, I lead. When years ago, the first time I got asked to teach a Relief Society lesson, that's about 17 years ago now. Literally, no one in the audience talked. None of the sisters talked. It was one person talking. And I went, I can't do that. And then I realized, we don't have to do that. It is all about learning from each other. I learned things from you guys today. Hopefully you learned something that I studied on. It's certainly not from me. And I don't find the Constitution the easiest talk I've ever had to do. So anyway, I'm thankful for you guys, and I'm thankful to be in Relief Society. I've missed it. And these things I say and ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Julie. I really appreciate you doing this because I panicked. I thought, is Amber giving the lesson? Lori didn't tell me he was doing it. At least I don't remember. My brain didn't remember. And so I thought, well, I've read it. We can muddle through it. Two things. Today is Tara Kimball's birthday. And who else knows what's important about June 27th in the history of our church? Isn't that the day Joseph Smith was martyred? June 27th, 1844. I believe that is. And I think that's why we sang Praise to the Man today. Jenna is really on top of those things, picking those hymns. Everyone have a wonderful week. And be sure to get back to me about the sisters you minister to and let me know, at least by Tuesday evening would be wonderful if you could. And Gail is going to give us our closing prayer. Thank you. You stand there.
Feel freedom of not wearing masks, to be able to feel the camaraderie of the sisterhood. We're grateful for the lesson and for the effort that Julie has put into it and for the conversations that we've had about these principles. We ask you to be with us as we travel to our homes, that we'll go safely, that we'll enjoy the rest of this day. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Bye, Joette.
Bye, Joette. We miss you.
I just went to visit, I spliced them. Albuquerque, New Mexico. Not playing. And then she got me in there. Just before the stage show. And when I found out, they just. And, you know, I have older granddaughters that aren't married, and this one was the wild child. And I'm like, she's your what? Oh my gosh. I didn't ever expect her to want to.